Welcome to Highway Diary. I'm your host, Eric Hollerbach. With me, Kerry Cassidy. My guest, Kerry Cassidy, who through Projectcamelot helped launch the career of many people, including David Wilcock in the early 2000s. Kerry is an author. She has written Space War, Total Recall, Book 1 and 2, The Rebel Genes, Secret Space, and the Future of Humanity. Welcome, Kerry Cassidy.
Thank you.
I've done a lot of research on David Wilcock, your friend's passing, and my condolences to you because I know you guys were good friends. My view on this, after all my research, my take is quite ordinary, but I have a lot of clips of people, different opinions, so that's what we're going to go through. But my clip is my take is ordinary. See, there's these podcasters that also lived in Colorado called Hidden in Plain Sight, and they were 24 hours bullying David Wilcock. They even took responsibility for his divorce. I don't like people like that. You know, I was a comedian. Well, I'm still a comedian off and on, but when I was hardcore 6 days a week, I noticed that sometimes I would get off stage and the next comic would only talk about my set. And there are some people out there that can't create the setup of the joke. They have to punchline by shitting on other people. Like, there is no flame without the log. And David Wilcock was constantly an engine that produced all this content, and he was vulnerable in putting it out there. And, you know, I noticed through comedy that some people produce the concepts and then some people steal just to shit on. So that's kind of my take. I think he was a very sensitive person. I think he was bullied by these local people. I think David also really sought adulation. He wanted to be recognized for his contributions to society. What is your initial take before I go through some clips of some other people's opinion? What do you think happened to Mr. Wilcock?
Well, I've done several shows, and with Michael Jaco, we went through I have a point by point showing you the anomalies that make no sense. And one of the primary ones actually is the parents who came in on the second day and said there was no foul play when they are in the East Coast. They didn't fly in to see the body, and that's normally what parents would do, in my opinion. And they also, I think, were bullied into coming up with some statement that no one could have known at that point, other than the foul play of, you know, what the police claim they saw, which is a man who shot himself in the head. So that's kind of foul. But to say there's no foul play is, you know, so early on, to me, smacks of intimidation.
Well, I dug up this clip of David Wilcock before his death, citing some concern. So I just want to share this clip with you.
They would have. They've tried and tried and tried. I have been given death threats directly from the Rothschilds 3 different times. They have actually had somebody that they could talk to.
Straw parties.
It's from them, through this person, to me, 3 times. Direct death threats from the Rothschilds. Shut up or we're going to take you out. And I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it.
Because what they really try to do is they try to lure you in with a honey trap that gets you to authorize your own death. That's how it works.
But you need to be careful, and let me tell you why. We are being plagued with naturopathic doctors being murdered. That's happening all around the country, all around the planet these days. We have had biochemists killed. Stephen Quayle and I have talked about that for years. They're getting to these people who are those that would be able to fight back with their knowledge of alternative medicine and things like that. And we've been having these things happen, David, since the beginning of time. Strange deaths occurring around some people who wanted to go public about some things in the presidential campaigns.
Sure.
They've died. A person who they claim committed suicide Obviously, they said got killed on his left side, but he's right-handed. So, I mean, who does that?
And nobody took his wallet or his keys or anything?
Nothing.
Just leave him there.
And they claimed it was a robbery. They robbed him of nothing. So in your case, you need to be careful.
It's not going to stop me. You know,
you can't.
I'm going to quote Abraham Lincoln.
Win.
I think I did this on your show before, but it's worth saying it again. I'd rather die once at the hand of an assassin than die every day in fear of assassination.
Well, that's quite an interesting clip in the context that we see ourselves in. What's your takeaway from that clip there?
Well, my takeaway is that I've gotten plenty of death threats and we've had wheels fall off our car at the top of, the Swiss Alps, various other kinds of threats told unequivocally by one of my whistleblowers they were out to kill me. So I believe that in the end, I'm protected. I'm sure that David was protected in similar ways. And I've said on other shows, and I've written a lot about this story already. So I do want to encourage people to go to my Substack to get more information. But basically, if I was threatened and I thought something was imminent, I would get in touch with the White Hats. So David and I both know the same. We had some similar witnesses. I shared my witnesses with him in the early days. And we even did a TV show together. We interviewed Pete Peterson together. That was my witness to begin with. In other words, I've been involved with David on and off through the years. I broke off with him around the Corey Goode time because Corey Goode threatened my channel with YouTube because we mentioned his name in a flattering way in one video. So I had to take the video down, remove his name, and put it back up. That's what happened. It went on for exactly, as long as it takes to put down a video and then put it back up. But he did write to YouTube and try to get my with all these Microsoft credentials. So they took him seriously. And then, asked me that I had to remove his name from my video. It was just one time in the video. It was nothing. And he was already out there on forums using his real name, the Avalon Forum that's managed by my ex-partner, Bill Ryan, and so on and so forth. So it's a much deeper story than with that whole thing. In fact, this whole thing is deeper than but I appreciate that you want to delve in from your own perspective, and that's fine. You're just going over information that I've been threatened. Okay. This is not a surprise to me. My whistleblowers have been threatened. My whistleblowers have been killed, in my view. So I don't think there's anything unusual in the clip you just played me. So what? What's the big deal? So he was threatened. Yes, that went on for sure. In fact, the first time they got a big threat was many years ago, and he came on my show and he started crying over the threat that he happened. That was when he was a little bit newer, to the sector, and it scared him, I guess, a lot. And so he's an emotional guy. He's a very upfront guy. He's not trying to pretend he's somebody else. He's, David was fully David, and that's what happened. So what can I say?
That's what I am aware of that interview, and I listened to that, and he's emotional and sensitive. I don't think I said anything wrong in that. Ben Fulford, from Week to Week, he said one thing and then he said another. So I just want to show you what Ben Fulford said on his channel.
David WILCOCK.
I mean, let's be real. What you're showing me are things I've probably already seen and that you're showing the audience. This is not for my benefit. I've done my research. I knew David for, 20 years easily. So, I appreciate you want to take the time and show the audience videos. That's great. But Don't pretend that I don't know about this.
I don't think I am. I'm showing the audience my research, and then I have
I
some clips,
understand.
and I just kind of want to go through what's publicly
Yeah,
available
but
for
my
both of us.
reaction, I mean, to clips. All right, we'll do this. Fine, go ahead.
All right. Sorry to annoy you, Kerry Cassidy. I did a lot of research. Trust me, it'll go deeper and deeper and deeper. It'll be fun. Just
Oh my God, I'm so impressed.
thank you for the condescension. Here's what Ben Fulford said.
According to my sources, it was killed. It was we used to work together. He helped expose the real reason that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, which was he was trying to take control of the Federal Reserve Board and give it back to the U.S. government so that the United States could, plan to do good things for the planet, whereas the group who assassinated him had this long-term plan to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. And they operate very high-level hit squads. And my sources, in the CIA tell me this was another hit.
So 1 week, Ben says his sources have told him that this is a hit. And then the next week he came out and said
he was
this.
He did have a beautiful young woman and as a wife, and everything seemed to be going great. And I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was killed or if he was fell into a similar trap they tried on me. I just don't know. But he was trying to work on free energy, and even if he committed suicide, he was driven into it. That's my belief.
So he says first he has sources in the CIA that said there was a high-level hit. Then he says, I don't know, but he seemed to have everything going with him. He had a wife, but I think he was divorced.
He was.
Yes, and I think that was very distressing that he was divorced. So I'm no stranger to the pokey, Kerry Cassidy. I've been twice. Who's counting? But I know how to do a records request. So one of the things Ben said is, I'm not going to believe this was a suicide until I see the body cam footage. And I said, bet, say less. So I went to go get the body cam footage. This is what they said to me. Investigatory records are not released as case 26-0788 remains an open death investigation. Open case files are not made public in order to preserve integrity of the underlying investigation. They're awaiting the coroner's office to manner and death. Now, if they have a footage of him shooting himself, why would they need a coroner to go over that if they have 8 police witnesses and or 2 police witnesses, the footage of that, and why would they even need to get the coroner if they have 3 cops watching him shoot himself?
And why did it take the coroner over 48 hours to identify him? Also, that's another good question.
And this is a month. So I just imagine this is a month ago. This is May 20th. This happened 4/20, right? So how many bodies are in the Boulder Sheriff's Department waiting for coroners to go, they shot himself in the head? That part, I'm like, now I'm leaning towards your side of the case where that completely doesn't make any sense. Was there any known enemies? Was there infighting other than Dark Cats? Did he have known enemies other than his estranged ex-wife? Was she an active enemy in his life? Do you know?
I think you started the show by talking about a group that were sort of enemies. There's also, I don't know this part of his life, but I do know that he talked about being threatened a lot, in the years surrounding what was going on with him at that time. So, I know that he was threatened in the past. I know that I was threatened in the past. So, this is not surprising. And yes, some people, some people are crazy and they act on their own. Other people are MK Ultra and they're what we call sleeping assassins, and they're set up to do certain things. If not kill somebody, then harass somebody. I have had I had a guy who showed up at what he thought was my apartment with a camera, yelling my name as if I still lived there, which thank God I didn't. because he wanted to out me over the Mark Richards story. And he also, went on stage and started yelling, and they had to throw him out of the conference on this story. So, look, you can't surprise me with this shit. And all I can tell you is that, yes, we're threatened. Sometimes it's worse than others. Okay. So,
one of the things that we were texting about is Wano Savin and aka JFK Jr., aka Wayne Willett. He said this about
actually, there are two ones. So get it straight. It's on my website. There's two pictures. You can see the two men are not the same, and they both call themselves 107. Okay, one is Wayne Willett, and the other one is actually JFK Jr. But if you don't want to believe that, just believe he's another guy. But there are actually two people.
So,
and maybe even more.
Wano Savin, played by two characters, met David Wilcock a long time ago, and I have that clip, and I think that's, hopefully you'll find this one interesting. Oh dear,
I've already heard it.
I know you've heard it, but I wanted you to comment on it. And here it is. Please be nice to me, Kerry Cassidy.
I'm trying to be, just to the point. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to clarify.
Real quick before we get to this, because I don't want to entangle David's situation into the other scientists. The reality is David was a friend since shortly after he got out of high school.
Wow.
And so I knew David for a very long time. And I'll just be frank, I had tried to tone it down with them several times, and we were good friends. I spent time with him a number of times, and there were some things there that I just felt were not helping on certain subject matter and wasn't accurate or correct. And he had tried to intone once or twice that maybe I was in agreement with him. And I said, no, David, not a chance, and not on some of these certain things. And even talking with a couple of other close friends of David over the last couple of days, it was interesting. Both of them said the exact same thing. If you look back on it, you saw this coming. And the short version is that David, for whatever reason, when some police arrived at his place in Boulder, he had a gun on him. He pulled it out and shot himself in the head. That is so sad. This is somebody that I enjoyed his company, didn't agree with on everything, but I'm not the internet police and give room for people to hear what's said, and then people have to weigh out and make their own decisions.
Yep.
I see some of the internet chatter trying to tie him because he talked about things going to space and aliens and what's coming with disclosure and all sorts of things. And the reality is that there was nothing there that David had that was the reason for taking him out. And he did it by his own hand. It's very sad. But if you convolute it into these other situations, I think you dilute what these other situations truly are.
Yeah.
And there is very real, bizarre drama. The thing that probably raised it to the top of the charts was the disappearance of this general who.
Okay, so Wano Savin, played by two characters, claim that he shot himself in the head. There's nothing to see here, but he also mentioned, I knew him since he was 18. That would be 1991 when JFK Jr., Wayne Willett's character, met David. And it would seem to me if they met him in 1991, they were grooming him to be the mouthpiece of the White Hat Alliance, seeing if they could get young people onto their program of what eventually became QAnon, to fight.
No, that is a supposition that is wild and has no basis in reality as far as I'm concerned.
So Wano Savin said that he met him when he was 18, just coming out of high school.
Well, back in those days, if it's the real 107, JFK Jr., he grew up in New York City, and I guess he was born in what they call Massachusetts, I think it is. And David is also from that part of the East Coast. I'm not sure where David was born. It might be Connecticut. It might be Massachusetts.
I think it's upstate New York, Kerry.
Upstate. Okay. So, they're not that far distant where they wouldn't maybe have had some kind of reason to interact. Although back in those days, if I remember correctly, and I don't have a chronology of David's life, and that's before I was involved. So there's at the Virginia Beach where the Edgar Cayce Foundation is. That is where David got involved, I guess you might say, first and foremost, in a more upfront fashion, in sort of this alternative, psychic, whatever you want to call it. So that's what Edgar Cayce was all about. And David felt some kind of affinity and thought he might be him in a prior life. So that's where David's head was at back then. He was not, or there was no MAGA back then. The White Hats actually stayed secret until 2017. And I was involved with the White Hats in 2010. So when you're trying to grab something from the future and say David was being groomed for it, maybe not. I think it's a real reach. I wouldn't, go necessarily down that road and think you've got anything.
Well, you don't think that JFK, let's say JFK Jr., I mean, he was alive publicly in 1991. You don't think he could have been, and his father and uncle were murdered. You don't think he was looking for people to be trustworthy insiders to perhaps help him with this movement to retake the government? If that's what the White Hats are?
Not exactly what was going on. Now, he was working with the Secret Service, John, and they did fake his death, and they did know Hillary was going to kill him. In fact, I think she even said so in their lunch meeting in New York City. But all of this was happening completely separate. And as I'm saying, if you look into David's chronology, I think you're going to find that most of the time he spent was affiliated with, her name is Carla, and the group that were associated with Edgar Cayce and that whole story in Virginia Beach. David, he moved around when he was younger. And again, you'd have to get a whole chronology. I'm not going to follow that out. You don't have to ask me, though. Go ahead and ask 107 if you want to go there.
Well, I just thought it was interesting that he knew him all the way back in 1991 before 107.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, there may be other reasons why he knew him back in the day. I don't remember when John got actually married, but he certainly was spending a great deal of his time in New York City at that point.
Yeah, I mean, John was a pretty high-profile character. To be hanging out with random high school kids in any capacity seems bizarre to me, unless
maybe he was lying. Who knows? Plus, there's two wands. Maybe they got it mixed up. They're not perfect. And I've met both of them. And, Wayne Willett has blue eyes, and he was, I believe, in the FBI, and that's how he met John, and they both got involved in this whole taking down of Russia and the ruble. And they probably got to know each other back then. And maybe some people used to get them mixed up or something. I don't know. I think there was some kind of backstory to how they got to the place where they both wore the same disguise and they were like a tag team. And I have, proof of this. And I have lots of colleagues that know exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody else except me comes forward, but that doesn't bother me. I mean, they are all hiding. That's fine. But I have had so many verifications aside from John himself, talking to him at length, arguing with him about certain things, so-and-so, seeing him in person several times, and so on. But that's a completely different subject. So all I can do is I can't tell you the association that John or the other Wayne, whether it was Wayne Willett or John, who actually knew David back in those days. I can't.
But it's a mixed milieu it's a mixed milieu of the QAnon people and the secret space program, because high-level government agents kind of, wouldn't they want a leader of the secret space program away from the Project Paperclip characters? Wouldn't they want an American leader of their secret space program? And wouldn't they maybe reach out to John, who then has some pull? This might be conjecture. There is something of the White Hat Alliance before it became QAnon. And what is that exactly? What is the
That's
shape
right.
what is the shape of
Like I
that?
said, well, my exposure began in 2010, I believe, maybe even a year earlier than that. And I was dealing with Paladin, who's the white hat who set up the website called the White Hat Reports. He was a forensic financial, or is a forensic financial investigator. He's kind of gone to ground. He's not in the public eye right now. I do occasionally, talk to him on and off. So that was in 2010. It's a lot closer in time than back in 1991. Now, I'm not saying the White Hats weren't operational. They were actually operational, definitely from the death of President Kennedy. And there's evidence that they go back even further than that. And they were made up and are made up of military. Okay, that's primarily how they operated. They decide to operate as a secret society. And when John F. Kennedy was assassinated or attempted assassination took place, they were definitely sort of galvanized, I guess you might say. And that's when they really put together their plan, as far as I know. Other people could argue with me. That's how I put it together. But it goes back in time to Kennedy's assassination, which is, I forget the actual date of that.
I think 1963. I
Seven? I don't know.
I'm not sure. So the shape of it, and David Wilcock, he came on my radar because he wrote a brilliant 90-page book called Financial Tyranny, that you can still get, Financial Tyranny, and it's all about the Marshall Plan post World War II up into the Kennedy assassination and the different power brokers vying for the future of humanity. Brilliant stuff. So I just want to talk.
Well, I know that David's brilliant, but let me just say that information came to him by some of our whistleblowers. I happen to know that for a fact. And also some people associated with the Bank of International Settlements and various other people. So he didn't make that shit up. He just was given it, and put it together in a book, which is great.
Like Karen Hudis type characters and people like that.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
They were the whistleblowers.
Mm-hmm. But that's still a skill, to take random pieces of information and to coalesce it into a digestible, clear
I said
timeline.
he's brilliant, and he did make it into a book, but I just wanted to be clear that he didn't make it up. He got it from whistleblowers.
Yes.
And I was involved back in those days, so I know and I remember all of that.
So I'm saying I'm a fan of that.
Great. Wonderful.
Okay. Be nice to me, Kerry Cassidy. We're on the
I'm
same
being
page
Nice.
here.
What can I do? I'm agreeing with you. I'm just clarifying.
Okay.
I just think it's important, since I have the history and you're a person who wants to know the history, that you had me on your show for a purpose, I assume. So you want my feedback. So I'm giving it to you. There's nothing about niceness or not niceness. It's just the information that I have. You don't have to agree with me, but when I say it, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I know. Because you're making statements that are not based on having the history behind you. You're making general statements how brilliant a certain book is when it's based on the testimonies of other people. So I just think it's important to say that.
Yeah, and he was a coalescer, and I think when
yes,
he got other people involved that were feeding him bad information, he coalesced bad information, and it led to
it's brilliant
demise
and lovely, and he's a wonderful writer.
Financial Tyranny. Anyway, so this my friend I was chatting with earlier today is a guy called Chris Knowles of the Secret Sun podcast. He said something. I have a couple clips of him on the Higher Side chats talking about David Wilcock's death, and I thought this is a interesting clip to show. This is only audio, and here we go.
Okay. I just think that there is this very powerful, very influential cult within companies like Lockheed, Raytheon, certainly within naval intelligence, that has this set belief, this expectation, okay? And again, this is very well documented. This is not theory. This is not conjecture. This is something you can go back and look at who were on the board of advisors and the board of governors of NICAP, for instance, in the 50s.
A space cult that goes back to the 50s. That's
Well,
what he
maybe
calls
you
it.
never read the Richard C. Hoagland book, The Magicians, all about the magicians of NASA.
So explain. So where I understand that's what I was getting at earlier, like with my point of 1991, that if there's this milieu of a secret space program and a space cult coming out of naval intelligence and Lockheed Martin and this kind of thing, that's an active group. And how organized are they is the questionable part. And when do they coalesce and when do they get a leader? But it seems like they're very secret, the secret space program going through. So, but is it a cult? Is it a religion? Because they seem to have this religion of...
Maybe you need to read the book Sex and Rockets by Jack Parsons, because Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, they were involved in Scientology. And yes, you could call them a cult if you like.
Why does that happen where scientists and serious engineers find themselves in a space cult, worried about EWAS and entities that they can channel?
Well, it's all part of the world we live in. Scientists are not impervious to being influenced. And, the secret space program has so many secrets that it's kind of insane. So yes, they are very involved in the occult. And again, there's two primary books that you can read that I recommend is Sex and Rockets by Jack Parsons. And he was the name, JPL was actually in Jack Parson Lab. And I worked there. Hello. And also, then the other book, which is Richard C. Hoagland's, I forget the exact title, but it's all about the magicians of NASA.
Gotcha. Getting back down to earth, to this David's death, what happened? There was a Beyond Mystic podcast. It was a roundtable, 2 hours long. I'm just going to share one clip that's two minutes long. I thought this was interesting. Mr. Cliff High had something to say. He was not very flattering to you. I will warn you, but this is what Mr. Cliff High said.
I've already heard it and I've written about it and been on shows about it. But yes, go ahead.
Can I play this for you? And can you
Yes, can I tell you if I've seen it or not already? Is that all right?
Sure, you can.
I'm not going to sit here and shut up because you want me to shut up and listen to you. I didn't come on your show to listen to you. I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to see these clips I've already seen. And you want to talk about that stuff. But the bottom line is I lived it. Okay. So I've lived all of this stuff. So I know a huge amount. I suggest you ask me questions, but let's look at this clip where, Cliff High insults me and, so go ahead. He does that all the time, by the way, not just in that show.
Okay. Here we go.
With Corey, and he knew I'd been fighting with Corey, and he also knew that I kicked Corey's ass in the lawsuit, right, and his attorney. So anyway, I contacted David last year on June 5th, the day before I moved here, and he took my phone call. Okay, but he was not receptive. All right, his mind was in a terrible state even then, and his authority for everything, even then, even after all the abuse he had suffered, his authority for everything was Corey Good. So I offered him a plan to save himself, save his reputation, and get him out of the situation he was spiraling into. He didn't listen to all of it. As soon as I got the first couple sentences out about how I was thinking he should do it, he realized Corey Good could not do this, and it was going to be a no go. He couldn't basically get out from underneath Corey Good, right? Mm-hmm. Now we come to the unfortunate end of this situation when David's mind lost its grip on reality and he committed suicide. And now my reason for speaking on this is, I'm not eulogizing him or anything. Some of the things I will say about him are likely going to be somewhat harsh. They're just a realistic appraisal, but it needs to be said. The reason it does is because we have the LARPers. We have Corey Goode trying to make things out of his death that are not factual and to promote his grift again. And we have Kerry Cassidy, who doesn't think very well, also promoting an erroneous idea about David's death. So just dealing with Kerry Cassidy's idea, she says that David is a scientist for Savati Aerospace Company. Savati Aerospace Company is a Ponzi scheme. They took David Wilcock for over $1 million and probably much closer to $2 million. They disappeared all that money into their founders, and he was left with nothing except a nominal title and feeling like an idiot. And after a while, he kept trying to think that there was going to be a rescue, right? And he does not understand business. You can tell that he was operating in a fantasy world the way he talked about what would happen when Savati got this money coming in. And he just doesn't understand the real world at all. And he was extremely impractical, and it was never going to happen. So he was doomed to this. So to address Kerry Cassidy, David Wilcock is not a scientist. He's not a critical thinker. He's never done science. He's a good presenter. Okay.
So what's your reaction to Cliff High? He says he's not a scientist, and he says
he's a liar, and I substantiated all of that. David has been writing about science forever. He's been meeting with scientists. He's been talking to free energy, scientists and secret witnesses in the secret space program, just like I have. His ability to write about science makes him a scientist in and of itself. But yes, he was now putting his money where his mouth was, and he invested, if I understand it correctly, something like $1 million in Savati, however you say that name. And Savati has not disappeared. Actually, it's still out there, and they have gotten other money incoming. And they also build, I don't know what you call it, airplanes, very sophisticated airplanes. So they weren't a Ponzi scheme. Actually, on the contrary, I did a lot of investigation into them. Now, the CEO was interviewed by David, and you can watch that interview so you can see the rapport. He obviously got very involved they had a compatibility between them and an interest in outing free energy. And whenever you do that, and I've watched this over the years because I've been in the same worlds, you get attacked. And that's inevitable. The deep state will attack you. The secret space program, loonies, the dark side of it, will attack you. And in many cases, they've been killed outright. Free energy activists and scientists have been killed across the board for years. And I mean, going on probably 50, 60, maybe even, 80 years, which is how long the secrecy has gone on. So, I'm sorry, but Cliff High doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And you can quote me.
I don't have access to him. I tried to get him on years earlier, and he doesn't respond to me.
By the way, he put David down for years before he tried to supposedly offer him help. Do you seriously think that if Cliff I tried to help me, I would take it? He's been bad-mouthing me for years. I know exactly how David felt, and he didn't have to be out of his mind to reject Cliff's altruistic help at a time when Cliff clearly thought he was crazy. I mean, listen to the person who is actually trying to give you some rundown on David when he didn't know him, and he badmouthed him whenever he could. I mean, this is not logical, okay? So if you look at David's perspective, just like if you look at mine, we don't see Cliff High as a colleague, okay? I certainly don't. And with good reason.
Yeah, I can imagine if someone would shit on you that you wouldn't want to take their advice about your personal life or your business dealings. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. What I'm worried about is after a divorce, and then he invests $1 million in Savati Energy, and they're not like paying dividends like Apple or Google stock would. Was he cutting his finances a little too close to the bone when he started dealing with these people?
I think he really fell in love with the whole concept, and he probably did go overboard in giving them too much money. But, So shoot us. I mean, you made a bad investment, or maybe it was a great investment. Maybe it would pay off in the future. Again, free energy is a calculated risk, or maybe an uncalculated risk. So anytime you get involved with that, I have whistleblowers who've been killed over it. Brian O'Leary is a NASA, he was an astronaut. He was a candidate that was supposed to go to Mars. They erased his records at Caltech. He'd been teaching there for years. He had to leave the United States because they put a hit out on him. He moved to Vilcabamba to hide out, and then they gave him a fast-acting cancer. He died within 1 year. He's on actually, I just re-released it. He's on our pilot episode for our Mars True TV series that was supposed to happen, which they shut down because my producer wouldn't do what they said, and they were the CIA, and they wanted to run it. So, I've been in this world for so long, and you want to tell me that it's surprising that, look, Cliff High, if you really want to know what I think about Cliff High, I think he's being paid by the deep state to badmouth me and a few other people. Okay. I don't think he knows what he's talking about half the time. And I think he's highly jealous of me. He's like losing his mind over being jealous over me. And he's been doing this for years. I think he's psychotic, frankly. But that's just my opinion. I don't think I can get sued for that. I can have an opinion. You're asking me, I'm telling you.
He does tell some hero stories about working at Microsoft for Bill Gates, and that's why he enjoys his lifestyle. And then, he was all in on the 2012 stuff, and then didn't really post when the synchronicity happened. He didn't really post any, oh, I messed up, I was wrong about that kind of thing. With his website Half Past Human, he was making very bold predictions that didn't pan out, and then he didn't say a sentence about, I kind of screwed the pooch on those predictions. Not a sentence. So,
surprise, surprise.
A little bit of narcissism there, but that doesn't mean a broken clock's not right twice a day. He did say that he would look. We were saying earlier about that Financial Tyranny book was brilliant, but it was coalesced by other researchers, including Karen Hudis and people of the like. Now, I kind of think I'm more on the side that he was a journalist and an author and a coalescer and a presenter of other people's material. And he got a little over his skis financially with the Savati technologies or whatever. And that adds to my thing that he was under a lot of duress. Which
he was hired under, he didn't just invest in that company. He also had a title, which was head of new technology, as I recall. He was a scientist. I don't care what you say. I know he was a scientist.
So he was.
So for what it's worth, if you want to agree with Cliff High, go right ahead. We don't really have to prolong it, do we? You said he's not. I say he is. What do you want to do?
I'm just putting my case out there, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Miss Kerry Cassidy. That's why you're on here, and you will know what I'm talking about firsthand. So, more on Corey Goode, if we could. I'd like to play a clip from Chris Knowles of the Secret.
Okay, but let me say to start out with, I'm not going to give you a reaction to Corey Goode because he tried to sue me in the past, and I'm aware of that. He has this proclivity.
Okay, well, this is Chris Knowles talking on the Higher Side chats. This is just freedom of speech in America. This is what he said.
Whatever.
And the whole Corey Goode thing is another thing. I know you want to get into that in a bit, but not surprising when you read the fact that he seemed to have this weird codependency with sociopathic personalities from a very early age, which I think came from his mother, to be quite frank.
Did he was he a bit of a follower, David Wilcock, and latch on to, was he codependent towards narcissists, do you feel?
No, but he was a very good researcher. And he would interview somebody, not just for the public, but behind the scenes. And one of the influences that I think was big on him was Pete Peterson. And I'm sure that he got a lot of material for his books in part from Pete. Okay, because Pete was a deep scientist into all kinds of things for the secret space program and was in it for like over 40 years of his life. So I'm sure he had a lot to share. And he was also a charming man. They killed his wife, and as far as I'm concerned, they gave him an early death as well.
Pete Peterson.
Yes.
How did Pete Peterson die? One of those fast acting cancers that
I don't remember how he died, actually.
Okay. And do you remember what happened to his wife? She was shot, or that you said they killed her? What his wife?
Yeah, I think they killed her. No, I don't remember.
There's this guy called Don Elkins that David Wilcock had a lot of affinity for. He was a pilot who had an untimely death. So Chris Knowles it made a very interesting comparison to the death of David Wilcock to the death of a character called Don Elkins. And I just want to play Chris's research. Again, I've been in touch with him earlier today, so I just want to play this.
And some have speculated that it was because, out of jealousy, this whole love triangle that had imposed itself on his life.
He's talking about Don Elkins' life in his final days.
And he had, towards the end of his life in 1984, had engaged in a 5-hour standoff with sheriff's deputies. And it ended with him shooting himself. And when you look at how David, according to the police reports, let's just say, I don't want to have to sit there and get involved in these debates. Yeah, I'm just telling you what the police reports say and so on. The way he had set this up sounds uncannily similar to Don Elkins's final day, the standoff with police. Now, I don't know if David lost his nerve or so on, but he was promoting the law of one up until his death. But the fact that David had, according to the police reports, apparently tried to recreate, the final exit of his hero, Don Elkins, is very strange and suspicious to me.
Was he taken with Don Elkins in the law of one?
Personally, no, I don't think he was his hero, to be honest. And I think that Don Elkins had psychological problems, and they had nothing to do with the kind of problems David had. I can say that if you get yourself shot in front of cops, that's very much William Cooper. That's what happened to William Cooper. And he's one of the most famous whistleblowers out there ever. So I don't think Elkins was very famous. He was involved with the Carla, Virginia Beach, Edgar Cayce group that were trying to download information from, Seth, I think, or whoever they called him. So I forget what they call him. But anyway, Raw. Does he go by the name Raw? Anyway, I read those books quite a long time ago. But yeah, the law of one I found actually does avoid telling you the truth about aliens. So I stopped getting into that. David loved it, however.
They're just about channeling. Can you hear me? Everything okay?
Yeah. Did you say something I didn't hear?
No, it just said my Zoom said my internet's unstable. I just want to make sure we didn't lose connection. All right. So the law of one people, David was really into channeling for information. I think it's just there's a big divide in my head between science and technology and Francis Bacon and channeling and thinking that you're in communication with entities for information.
I guess you don't know who Maria Orsich is that brought in the technology to the Nazis by way of the Aldebaran group.
I've seen
that
stuff
was channeling.
on that.
That's channeling. Okay. So you do get, and actually I would say that Tesla would probably agree that he got information from the stars. He tried to build a phone to the stars and said the most important communication we can do is to communicate with the stars. If you want to call that channeling, go right ahead, but it's not always channeling. Ashiana Dean, whose books I highly recommend about the real history of humanity, called the Voyager books 1 and 2. They're on the front page of my website. She downloaded from what's called the Guardian Races, and it's a history of humanity that goes far beyond the Bible. So I wouldn't put down channeling quite yet. I think you're not maybe knowledgeable about the kind of information that does come through other beings in other places, in other planets, and so on and so forth, into the earth.
I can speak to when I've been writing screenplays and doing stand-up comedy. When I have a girlfriend and a sexy muse, then I do feel like more inspired. I can say that. That's I mean, I'm kind of meat and potatoes kind of character, Kerry Cassidy.
Yeah, well, you must know enough about Nazi history to know that that's where the information came from, Maria Orsich. There's a great deal of information about how the technology came through her and a group of women, okay? And if you're not familiar with that history, I suggest you become familiar with that history. So that's technology, that's pure evidence of technology being downloaded through channeling, call it what you will, to women who then communicated with Hitler and the whole thing, and got the Foo Fighters happening, and got all of technology that came over with the NASA scientists and the building of UFOs or reverse engineering, the honeyboo and all this kind of thing. It's all technology. So it's the most naive statement ever to say that you don't think there's a connection between channeling and technology when there's a huge history of it.
I've also lied to women. I've said, hey, thank you. Maybe Werner von Braun was, designing a little spaceship, and then, he made love to some character, and then he goes,
You don't know your Nazi history, obviously. Just say you don't know. So that's
I don't
fine.
know. I don't know. I'm trying to have fun.
Yeah, I understand. No, not everyone does, but it's out there.
I don't know. I know that story. I've seen that story before. Is it possible that okay, I believe L. Ron Hubbard was friends with Aleister Crowley, and he was read into the secret space program, whatever iteration it was, when he was in naval intelligence back in the day.
Sure.
And then he started to write his own fan fiction. He started to write his own bullshit. And his goal was to kind of threaten the space cult and naval intelligence, which he dabbled in. And also he wanted to take in suckers and take their money. I think L. Ron Hubbard was a complete psychopath that wrote his own, bolstered his own. I've been to a Scientology museum before, and they have his diplomas, like just walls breaking over, walls breaking, just unloading all of his diplomas and his advanced degrees from he was the greatest mountaineer in the world, he was the greatest lover in the world, he was the greatest nuclear physicist in the world, he was the greatest this in the world. It's kind of fun to go to Scientology as a
Actually, I can't stand Scientology, but I will say that L. Ron Hubbard was right about aliens and the invasion of aliens and having something to do with our being, genetically re-engineered. He's talking to some degree about the times of the Anunnaki. And he did write fiction books, which I've never read, but I have friends who have been in Scientology, and Hal Puthoff and many of the scientists that are actually front and center on top. Hal Puthoff, in case you don't know him, is a top physicist, well-respected. He's out there right now talking about aliens. And, these people consider themselves at one time Scientologists. So as I say, I also was very involved in with my first partner called Bill Ryan, and he was a Scientologist. He wasn't the same kind of Scientologist as the regular ones. He was in this Ron's org thing. But one of the reasons we split up was over that. I don't like Scientology. I have issues with it, but there's some excellent information in how it was involved with the CIA and with the, secrets that especially the taking down of Nixon, which was basically a Scientology plot, from what I understand, that L. Ron Hubbard was involved with. And there's a whole book that was written that don't know if I can remember the name of it, by this very excellent author that I read a while ago, which is all about that, in case you're interested. So there's a lot of permutations. A lot of people that are scientists strangely got very involved in Scientology all those years back.
A space
So
cult.
this is not
That's
odd.
where the space cultists can have a refuge.
Perhaps one of the ways.
This is my point on this. And if you can't mention it because you're worried about lawsuits, I think I looked at Corey Good's LinkedIn, and he made his own fan fiction. He was in the Texas State Guard. Before that, he was a software engineer for small banks. I got that information from his own LinkedIn. And I think Corey and David had pressure on them to keep topping their last episode on Gaia. They became very famous on Gaia. And then it's like, well, what about, like, just like I'm sure South Park, they're always racking their brain, how do they top the last season? So then they started writing their own fan fiction, and the little things of truth they had to stretch over multiple seasons of that show to keep their income. I think this is an interesting thing that, again, Chris Knowles said on the Higher Side Chats, and I'm going to play that for you.
To be quite frank, when I was reading David Wilcock's autobiography, quasi statement of faith, The Ascension Mysteries, it became very clear to me and blatantly, painfully obvious in the text itself, where he'll talk about these personal traumas that he experienced, and then he'll just start going on about the Space Brothers and all the rest of it. It became painfully obvious that all these weird beliefs that he had latched onto were a way of him coping with his much more insidious and intractable personal, emotional, traumatic issues.
So he had some personal issues that he sought escape in the Space Brothers.
Getting back to David Wilcock, though, I think he was just so desperate to escape himself. And I think that, I don't know how deliberate this was on Good's part. I mean, Good just seems to me like a garden variety sociopath. Personally, just the way I see it.
Well, I have
that
information on
David
Good, so
Wilcock
I
was
can't
so
talk about it.
You have information, but you can't talk about that.
Yes, I will say that from what I know of David, and by the way, who's this person talking? Did he ever meet David?
This is Chris Knowles. I don't know if he met David. I can ask him.
Doesn't sound like it. But at any rate, he sounds like a garden variety skeptic of the secret space program and everything I probably investigate. But nonetheless, the fact is that David and Corey's relationship was one of whistleblower to the journalist, reporter, documentarian who was taking all the information. And I believe that in a certain sense, there is a weird relationship that goes on, if you want to call it that, between people like me and David when we take testimony, and we do form a bond with those whistleblowers that we deal with. And oftentimes we fight the good fight on their behalf. So I believe in what I know of David, he would have been defending Corey and his information. And I think that he probably thought, based on his background and his evaluation, that Corey's information was good and true. Now, Corey had to go in a court and deny all of it. And I have reasons to believe that why he did that, and so on and so forth. But it's not, I don't want to go there. All I'm telling you is just some background in terms of their relationship. I believe David believed Corey's story and believed he was being unfairly, because he kind of became a laughing stock for a while when they talked about the blue avians and the whole thing. So I think that David became his defender. And that was part of the relationship going on there. And he's not the only person that David would have defended. I'm sure Pete Peterson and others, but those people didn't get exposed to becoming laughing stocks. Okay. So I have now decided that it's great possibility that a lot of Corey's information may be actually legit, because there's reasons to believe that it might be. But unfortunately, there are aspects to it that, just like the whole thing right now, everyone, I mean, in this milieu we're in right now, we're having this so-called disclosure. And what people have been laughing at for the last 80 years or more as being wildly crazy. And by the way, Cliff High was one of them, pretending to laugh at me when he was actually being paid to laugh at me and make me seem crazy. But every single thing that I'm talking about, and I put into 2 books now, is turning out to be true. And it's going to be substantiated more and more as we go through time. So laugh all you want at all of us, but it's going to be proven, and it's being proven right in front of your face right now. And it could be proven in other ways, because we are going to have a war with off-planet aliens. And the Iran war is just the first step. And the Iran war is all about stargates that are like doorways that let in alien beings. And what those aliens have is technology that can let the people who let them in and make friends with them rule the world, because you can rule the world if you have the biggest gun. So that's what's really going on. But, go ahead and laugh. Go ahead and brush it off. Go ahead and pretend you think this guy is some kind of authority on David when he doesn't know fuck all, and ignore me.
Well, I'm on. I got you on. So you defend the blue avians though? Like as a scientist,
I'm not defending them, God forbid, but I happen to know some backstory on that regard. And I'm simply telling you that David wasn't crazy. If he was defending Corey and his story, there had to be some good evidence there, because David was a wonderful researcher. He was an excellent author. And the one thing he always wanted to do was have a legacy and, to have people respect him. And he adored science. It was like, in a certain sense, it was his first love. So he would look at things, unlike me. I am not a scientist. I wouldn't even want to be I don't even like scientists anymore. I've seen them lie and be mind controlled to the nth degree, to such a degree that I never dreamed, ever since the COVID thing. They have been absolutely, I mean, I always couldn't stand doctors anyway, but now I have no respect for scientists, actually, by and large, other than they're trying to explore their world, but they don't understand it. And they go out of their way to put each other down, to put each other's science down, and to make fun of each other when they don't know fuck all. It's just amazing to me. Instead of having an open mind, instead of exploring the world around us, people pride themselves in basically making fun of other people because they have open minds. And when you go out into the universe, as we are doing now, and you start opening these Pandora boxes, you're going to see that all the things that you thought were bullshit and you laughed at are true. So all I'm saying is I would put Corey Goode and his information into that group, that David believed in him, believed in his stuff. David is not a stupid man. He proved that he had a very high intellect. And therefore, I don't think he was just emotionally bowled over by something. No, he was legitimately devoted to the information that he was getting from Corey Goode. I didn't hear that information. I didn't even pay attention to it after I broke away from them. But I can tell you that David didn't do anything without thinking it through thoroughly. He was an extremely thoughtful, had great self-reflection skills. He was a great analyzer. He was a good and excellent scientist. The way Jack Sarfati, who writes articles every day on academia, is a great scientist. You know, it doesn't matter if you ever touch a free energy device, and I can guarantee you that David did. I can guarantee you that David actually was forming a company with Pete Peterson before he died, by the way. So he was on that road for a long time.
I mean, listen, there were several doctors who cured cancer and then they wind up dead or bankrupt or anything like that. So I accept that as an answer that he made a investment in a company that was under attack. I accept that. I do have an open mind to evidence. What I don't have an open mind to is like, you know, even the cryptids that chase Bigfoot, you know, they at least go out and they put rubber cement into footprints or whatever. So if you're going to make extraordinary claims about big blue chickens, you should have a feather or something like that. And I think I think he
That's an old argument that doesn't actually hold up, by the way.
Why not? Why can't he
continue.
have some evidence about the blue avians? If you know, why isn't the standard of anyone who makes any discovery of a new moth under the same investigative rigor as the blue avians?
Because what you're dealing with are levels of dimensions, densities, and this is what you see is not all you get. Okay. So there are many, many, many permutations to reality. And this table that my computer is on, and my computer for that matter, is alive. It's conscious as far as I'm concerned. And most Illuminati will tell you it's conscious. Consciousness is everything because source is everything. And therefore, we are all consciousness. And therefore, what you think is solid and material in this reality is a complete illusion. Most of them are just particles that are closer together in a rock and further apart in a human. They're particles, and you can walk through walls if your particles match the vibration, the frequency of the wall. I mean, you should study Tesla if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because you'll learn a lot more.
I should open a damn book. Look, I know a lot about, I stay in my lane and I try not to whisper a word of things that I don't know anything about. So I'm, you know, if I'm skeptical or if I'm going, okay, well, A plus B equals Z, doesn't mean I'm making fun of things or shitting on things. I think about these things a lot.
Okay.
I honor these things. And so that's why I'm like, well, okay, explain it to me then. I don't have an ego. I'm like,
Okay, but don't go around saying that you want some material reality to reflect on the multiverse that we live in, which is so extensive and may actually be a simulation for all we know.
who know? Yeah, I play a lot of video games and I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm going crazy. I started this whole thing saying that these people that are bullying David, I didn't appreciate it. So
All right, but I don't think they killed him, okay, frankly, and I don't think he killed himself. So we're at a parting of the ways in that way, but I'm just happy to you know, agree to disagree. Did you have me on your show for any other reason? Because I told you ahead of time that I really didn't think that was going to be a worthwhile way to spend my time, was to go over the material I've already analyzed and put out my thoughts on.
I apologize. You did say ahead of time that you weren't happy with the content. And then, you know, for the last 3 weeks, I've been listening to dozens and dozens of hours of podcast material, slicing clips, and hopefully you at least appreciate that effort. And I did go after the Boulder police report, which I got, you know. I tried to be cordial and say, hey, listen, I'm really concerned with this character. You don't know this. In the early days of Highway Diary, episode like 1 through 10, a lot of stuff was about me being a fan of David Wilcock. So then when he died, you know, this is an old thing. Me and my sister were driving across. We went to the Roswell UFO Museum. We talked to Mr. Mark Briscoe, one of our early episodes, and I was accusing him of holding back free energy and why are you in bed with the oil people, you know? So I was accused, you know, so I've been hip to this stuff for a while. I know that there's a lot of suppressed inventions out there for the big corporations to harvest our cash. Whatever is left after taxes, they want to harvest us, charging us for medical care, which is always poison, and gasoline, which is obsolete, and all. Like, I'm down with all that stuff. So I just want it to be, evidence and science-based. But if you're telling me that he was investing in this thing, and Cliff High says that it was a Ponzi scheme, but you're saying that they're an attacked and legitimate
People
business
have different
entity?
opinions all the time. It's not the end of the world.
I don't think but those are two valid, logical perspectives. So I'm really glad that I had you on to highlight that. Have you dealt with that company that David had invested $1 million in, or
No.
you just listened to his interview that he did with the founder? And
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And you had known some whistleblowers who, like, that's where some people say he wasn't a scientist. Like, you seem to be lumping David with the 11 plasma scientists that have all been murdered. Were they consultants to that free energy
They were
company?
involved with, yes, they're involved with
So
reverse
that's the
engineering
connection.
UFOs. Absolutely.
So it's that company that
Everyone is. Our whole earth is. The Iran war is about getting off oil. Okay. Trump's pushing us through that door, whether we like it or not. People, come on, think about it.
Trump is trying
Everything we
to.
do is about, okay, Hal Puthoff and all his scientists and Jack Sarfati. What are they talking about? They're talking about UFO technology. How do they power the UFOs? That's what all of these organizations are doing now. That's what NASA's doing behind the scenes. That's what, Bigelow is doing behind the scenes. You name them, and they're involved in free energy, what is called free energy, for lack of a better word, 0 point energy, call it what you will. This is, the Holy Grail, if you want to call it that. But they have it. They've done it. Okay, they've cracked it. But, so people on the outside are trying to get in and trying to get access and trying to learn about it. All right.
So a public company that goes through that threshold, through that curtain, applies a patent to a technology and then puts it for commercial. That is what they're scared of. That's what they're holding back.
They're not scared of patents because this stuff has all been reverse engineered and patented, 60 years ago. I mean, what can I tell you? When I say secret space program, they are going interstellar. They are going to Mars. We have colonies on Mars and the moon, on the moons of Saturn and maybe Jupiter. Outside our solar system, we go interstellar all the time. We jump. Okay, the craft jumps just like it does in Battlestar Galactica. I mean, and I have dialogues with a whistleblower who was in the secret space program his whole life, called Captain Mark Richards, that I interviewed in prison for 12 times over a period of 5 years. Actually, now they've disappeared him. I can't get in touch with him so far lately because of a statement he made about Three Eye Atlas. But I have a book that I've just re-released, re-edited to clean it up and make sure that the edits were correct, because it was first downloaded from audio, recall. And therefore that, typos and things like that were there. Sentence structure wasn't correct because of, audio is never like audio, how we talk is never like how we write, that kind of correction and so on. So I just released it. It's on Amazon. The book behind me is called Rebel Gene, that talks about secret space program. I've been doing this every day, every hour for the last 20 years. So all I can tell you is yes, secret space, getting hold of alien technology. That's what Saddam Hussein wanted. That's why he was letting the aliens in through the Stargate in Iraq. I mean, all of this is in my testimony that I've talked about 1,000,000 times at this point. I'll talk about it more if necessary, but I just want you and the audience to understand that this is what I have done with my life, okay, is investigate this story. And I can tell you that free energy, 0 point energy, and other technology that comes from alien races is what it's all about. Okay. And they are all about colonizing other planets, going outside our solar system. They don't think the sun is going to last, and so on. Erica Kirk and Epstein were involved in child trafficking and taking children off planet to go, populate our colonies. They looked for special children to do this with. Okay. So, I tell people these things and you can think I'm crazy, but in the end of the day, it's amazing how many things I've talked about that are being proven right again and again and again. So call me crazy. I have no problem with that. But I can tell you that if you don't know that reverse engineering alien tech is where it's at, and that's what everything that's going on our planet right now is all about. That's how we make leaps and bounds into the future. And the secret space program is running our surface Earth. They could give a shit what anybody votes for up here. They simply they'll tell Trump what to do. The aliens they work with will tell them what to do with the financial system, and we will see who will win. Okay. But this is what's happening. Trump has to make a deal with them to even exist.
Do you think that Trump, in whatever capacity he has, is advocating for the release of, and there's a hostage negotiation right now, but to free humanity with 0 point energy technology? Are you on the bandwagon that
Yes,
Trump
obviously.
is? Mhm.
Trump, it comes from, his uncle worked with Tesla. I believe Trump became president because of a deal that was made by the dark side. Because as his uncle helped decipher the Tesla papers and secret them away, which they've never seen the light of day since then, except in secret projects. And that Trump was part of the deal. Okay. That's his family connection. So he is right in there in spades.
Yeah, his uncle was involved in funding or holding the patents for Tesla or facilitating his
In
research.
collecting the documentation. What that involved, I don't know.
Okay. Um, I just hope that we're headed for a release of these technologies. As family members have all these medical problems. I wish medical things would be released, cures for things that have been suppressed. I'm all about. I made a whole documentary about suppressed invention, so I'm on your side.
Okay.
I just want but I also like evidence-based things, and I want to be able to go
So
to a
do
car
I. That's why
dealership,
I'm a researcher.
go to a car dealership and buy a magnet powered car, which I've known about, or a water powered car that Stan Meyer was murdered over. Like I think
And
I'm
Bob
just like,
Lazar
and Bob
was
Lazar, let's go over these.
scorned over.
Let's find these people who are the gatekeepers and murder them. To me, it's very easy. I don't know
That's not gonna
how this is difficult, but I don't know why we can't throw them all in wood chippers and start a new day fresh, print new money. I don't know why we can't do this. What is stopping us?
Because, as always, the ones with the biggest gun and the best mind control right now are in power on this planet. And I am sure that the White Hats are doing everything they can to make deals with the dark side, to get through, to take over for the dark side, to trick the dark side. They're busting their ass right now fighting this war. And it is a war to free humanity.
The eternal war between good and evil. Even when I was in cathedrals in Rome, they're pointing up and down. There's only one choice, heaven or hell. And there's just this internal struggle that humanity is always going for, because we have these entities over us, good and bad. Hopefully the good guys win. Anyway, Kerry Cassidy, her books are the Rebel Gene, Secret Space, and the Future of Humanity, and Space War, Total Recall, book 1 and 2. Thank you to my guest, Kerry Cassidy. I hope it was fun for you and not too contentious.
All right. I hope it was for you as well.
Thanks, Miss Kerry Cassidy.